But another thing that I did learn, who was an abolitionist this week, was the founder of Red Lobster.
What?
The founder of Red Lobster was an abolitionist.
That is crazy. And the first thing that popped into my mind is, of course, that's why Beyonce uses it in her song. Recordings in progress.
Hi, friend.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy Tuesday.
Happy Tuesday. It always feels more like Thursday, but happy Tuesday.
Exactly. Oh my goodness. So I did something interesting this morning. I actually put out a thing on my Instagram story and I was just like, hey, we're recording a podcast tonight. Anyone have any questions for us? And I actually got 2 questions.
Yay! Exciting. Okay.
So you wanna answer them before we get into this week's episode?
Let's go for it.
Alrighty. So my Instagram is at Endless Wonder, and I talk a lot about like politics, adoption, plants, like it's just whatever. I put a lot of random stuff on there. So I had a response from an adoptee whenever I said, if anyone has any questions, let us know. So this adoptee said, what roles do adoptees play in being anti-racist, and can we weaponize our place in 2 spaces or identities against racism, for allyship and against racism? So
I said she.
Yeah. So I think what this adoptee was asking was how adoptees can utilize their own power as being of the population of adopted people. I don't know how else to word that, but how can we use that power to be better allies to other people of color, and how can adoptees utilize those spaces? I think they were referring a lot of the times to transracial adoptees too. Because like a lot of adoptees of color are adopted to white families. I'm not saying all, but a lot of them, which also has a colonial and racist history. Fun fact, y'all. Adoption's interesting.
I feel like we'd have 2 different takes on this. Do you want to go first?
Yeah. So my first thought is, one thing that as a transracial adoptee, I feel very comfortable in white spaces because I grew up in white spaces. I know how to navigate them. I know the nuances, and I know the minute mannerisms that you go through. Like I know how to quote unquote act white. I've been told several times by many people on the phone, you sound very, very white. And I was like, sir, we're at work, but okay. He was very surprised during the meeting. So I think a lot of transracial adoptees who are adopted into white families know how to navigate whiteness. We ourselves might not identify as white, but we know how to work our way around it. And there's a lot of code switching involved. So I think that adoptees of color definitely can use that knowledge to be better allies to other people of color by calling out white people, because we're not afraid to, because we're comfortable in these white spaces. And we have a lot of white connections. Just the reality of that.
Yeah.
So that's my take. What about you?
I agree. I think not a member of the community, as a non-member of the community, I just think there's so much to untangle as an adoptee, a transracial adoptee, that there's so much there. And then assuming that you're a person of color because you're a transracial adoptee, like you also are a person of color. So there's a lot of untangling. And like you said, it's a little easier because like your family members are white and you get in a rhythm of saying like, hey, that's not okay. Hey, that's racist to your family members. So just continuing to be upfront with that, I guess. And making sure that you're doing the best of your ability, keeping yourself educated, to try to make sure that all people are spoken about equally, and trying to do your part to stop whatever stereotypes you hear or any harmful language that you hear or biases.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. So yeah, that was a fun little adventure. Posting that in my story this morning. I was also like super hyped on coffee. So like still super hyped on coffee because I had my last cup of the day at 4 p.m.
Oh, coffee just runs through you. It's just like who you are to me.
Yeah, it's approximately 30% of my personality. Yeah. But I will never have as much coffee running through me as Ben Drake. Ben Drake lives, breathes, owns coffee. I don't know if he
Shout out to you guys.
But thanks, Ben Drake.
Did you say there were 2 questions?
That it was a 2-parter question.
It's a 2-parter question. That was a fantastic question. Major shout out to you.
Thanks, Instagram followers. Alrighty. So we are at part 2. You ready for the question at the beginning?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna use my white sounding voice to read this. What systems are racist that need to be changed now? I've heard arguments about things related to housing and schools not being well funded, which both of them seem to be more like economic issues than race issues. I can see how in the past, the now grandparent generation may have suffered from racism under redlining and other practices that are now illegal. I also see how that can have lingering effects. However, I see those racist issues as having been dealt with. Brianne. Well, Brianne, I don't know how to tell you. It's not over.
It's where to start. I appreciate the tone of this question a little more, but considering the standard is why aren't people over their traumatic history, it's not necessarily the greatest of scales.
Like, I like that she recognized racist policies, but you're almost rooting for her because you're like, oh, you're so close. So close. Right there.
There seems to be a mishap because how do you recognize it but not understand that it's still impactful today? There's it's like one tiny part that's missing that really changes the perspective of the question.
So close. So I am going to ask you first. How would you answer that question if I was Brianne and I was asking you? So, like, I can see how some of those racist policies in the past had lasting effects, but I think they've been dealt with. Like, okay, we've been there, done that.
I would like start to like feel heat rising in my head, and I would take a deep breath and I would smile and I would say, maybe. You well-intentioned person, you can't recognize the history and not recognize how it's still impacting Black and brown people today. Redlining is still going on today. And these racist policies have manifested themselves in today's society. And then I would try to like walk away, I think.
Like I think you would handle the situation better than I would, because my first reaction would be, oh, sweetie. like the Southern, oh, honey.
It sounded like bless your heart.
It's definitely a, oh, bless your heart situation.
How would you respond?
For those of you people who might not be from the South, if someone says, oh, sweetie, or bless your heart, they're basically calling you dumb.
It's not a compliment.
It is not a compliment. I had, like, just quick sidetrack. I had an ex one time that tried calling me sweetie, and I was like, no, don't do that. No. Nope. I'm from the South. Don't do it. I think for me, in these conversations, bringing up examples, like relevant examples from my own life, if this was someone who was from my hometown, and I actually have heard this conversation before in my hometown with a white relative. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry.
You almost did it. You almost did.
No, I'm going to call him out on this one because he's learning and he's trying. But, and we've had this conversation before. I love you, Dad. He saw this more as a have and have not situation with school districts as a more economic issue. And so I was in college when we had this conversation, and I asked him, okay, look at our hometown. I'm originally from Waco. Fun little tidbit fact. And if you go into this specific, I forgot what project it was, but it was taking data from the US 2010 census. I don't know if they've updated it to the 2020 census yet. That would be really awesome if they would, but I don't know how these things are funded. So anyways, but they took a census data and they marked down every different race, every household race that was registered. I don't know how my family registered me because I'm like, but it's so interesting because it almost looked like a peace sign. If my hometown was a circle, if Waco was a circle, it looked like a peace sign. You could clearly see where all the Black residents were, where all the Latinx residents were, and where all the white residents were. And that's also how our school districts are drawn up. There are 3 high schools in my area. I went to the white one. There was Waco University in Midway. And you could ask almost any, I would say teenager, and ask them, where do all the white kids go to school? And they would say Midway. And that's the high school that I went to. Not sure if it's exactly the same now, since I graduated in 2013. So it might be really old data by now, but they only do the census every 10 years. But that's still the 21st century. And if you like went and looked at the property taxes, the school budgets, even the athletic teams, you could see like who got funding. And my dad might have said, oh, it's an economic issue, but I'm like, but who is better off economically, historically right now? Specifically in Waco, Texas, it's white people.
It's definitely, again, it's like you get it, but you're like missing that one piece, you know, if you argue that it's just an economic thing.
So close.
In a capitalist society, how big of an impact do economics have?
So close.
Yeah, I mean, the big argument against property taxes is it's like exactly as you expressed. I mean, if you live in these well-off areas, which are more than likely to be full of white people, and they're funding their local school, then that school is going to have so many more resources and so much more money poured into it than a school that's founded in an area with more people of color. It's just how America works right now. And the systems that we have in place just continue the cycle. There's no fix. There's no in any way sight of a better future because there doesn't seem to be any push for any change.
So like, let me frame it for you. Let me frame it this way. So we know that Brown versus Board of Education totally sided with integrating the schools. And also, this person who asked Acho this question said grandparents' generation. My dad was in high school during this time, so I'm just gonna point that out. So it was not that far. It was not that like back to then. No.
Mm-hmm. Not that long ago.
Not that long ago. That's the word. Where was I going with that? Oh yeah. We're fine. It is fine.
Everything's fine.
I completely forgot what I was gonna say. My train of thought. Oh my god.
It started off as a really solid point.
I'm sure it's gonna come up sometime. Oh my gosh. Why don't you talk and I shut up now?
I was just gonna reread the question because I was trying to think of what I first thought of when I read it the first time. I think this mindset, did you think of it?
Yeah, but you go. And
no,
now
go
that
ahead. It's here. Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
All right. So I was thinking, yeah, Brown versus Board of Education. We know separate is not equal. And they were like, well, racism is illegal now. And I was like, well, slavery was illegal for like 2 years before Juneteenth happened.
Mm-hmm.
Like people still will carry on with racist policies and still default to the edge of racism, whether or not there is a law prohibiting it, because it's easy to write a law and it's hard to interpret it and actually see it play out.
Especially in a racist society that doesn't really want equality.
Exactly.
I'm feeling very cynical today, so I think there are more of these like very dark jokes that are coming. But what I was gonna say, I think you bring up a really great point. And this type of mindset just really reminds me of like why we need to talk more about reparations. I think this is the second time we're mentioning reparations in this book. So major shout out to Emmanuel Acho. It's just like, if we don't understand how big, like reparations is not like extra credit, or it's not like a bonus. Reparations is like necessary. And so if you don't get how past and present policies are continuously affecting people, then how much of a conversation can we really have?
Going back to schools, my first internship for social work school in undergrad was at a Title I school. Okay. Title I meaning that like a ridiculous amount of students fell below the federal poverty line, which also the federal poverty line is also inherently racist. Let's just go there. We're setting this on fire. Anyways, Title I schools is basically a school that 90% of its student population qualifies for federal free or reduced lunch, meaning that they rely on school for 2 meals a day. That is a reparation. Yes. And it's food.
Yes.
So if anyone comes after me saying that they don't believe in reparations, I'm like, great, you like starving children. Cool. We're fine. It's fine. I'm very cynical today too.
What was your experience at a Title I school as an intern?
So this was in the same area because I went to college in the same area that I grew up in. And this was a Title I school. Like I said, I went to the fancy Midway high school. I
Mhm.
remember sitting in a school board meeting, and the board was so excited that they were able to budget for 10 Kindle Fires
For a district?
for a whole district.
Oh,
The school I worked at alone had 600 students.
yeah.
And it was a junior high, so 2 grades, 600 students. And that same year, my high school, my district, had given every single student an iPad from kindergarten to 12.
Wow. But how is that connected to racism? I don't understand.
Um, so when people go and try to take out a loan for housing, banks are racist, credit scores are racist, that we learned this week. I texted
I will
you screaming.
I will put the link in the description.
I texted you screaming that credit scores are racist.
Mm-hmm. I just assume everything having to do with capitalism is inherently racist. This is just my assumption.
The education system is also capitalist.
Mm-hmm.
Ergo, it is racist. We're fine. This is fine. So that's what it was like for me to be in the same community that I grew up in,
Mm-hmm.
and to see students that were no less worthy of a good education
Mm-hmm.
and no less worthy of having enough food for a
Mm-hmm.
day than the students that I went to school with. And yet they were here getting completely separate opportunities.
Yeah. Which is what the Supreme Court found. Separate is not equal. And yet here we are. We see it played out still in today's society. Yeah.
Yep. What about your internship? I remember you worked for an education nonprofit.
I did work for an education nonprofit.
Not to put you on the spot, but what was your experience with it?
It was interesting. It was a nonprofit, and it was an international one. So we catered to schools that were in other countries. And I had a positive experience. I did. It's just it makes me think every single time I hear of like building schools in another country, and you could take your pick at like which country I'm talking about, but typically it's under the context of like, oh, we're helping them, and thinking about the conditions of schools here in the US and what is our role internationally. It's like a big question, but what our role is internationally as opposed to our domestic responsibilities for people who are still underserved in our country. And what is the balancing act of that?
We're fine. It's fine. We're fine. As like, and like reparations doesn't even stop at education. Reparations, like full on reparations, what my vision for it would be is that a lot of museums would return artifacts.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of countries would return gold that they stole from mines from other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And that, oh my gosh. And like, just so many things would just be completely undone. That is what my vision of reparations is. But it's also like, we can't even get policies like affirmative action to be solid. It's going back to the Supreme Court in the next 6 months. Do you see that?
No.
Affirmative action is being it's University of North Carolina and Harvard are being named in a lawsuit claiming that affirmative action hurts white people and that it hurts Asians.
Okay, I did see Harvard was being sued because they had a harder process in enrollment on Asian students. Just, I'll see if I can find the article, link that also. But affirmative action, a policy that actually has helped white women more than any other group. Oh,
It's so like,
yeah, it's
hmm.
what to even say.
It makes me literally want to just like open my mouth and chew on this microphone out of frustration.
Yeah,
Like,
that's, I mean, I think going back to reparations, the original intent was just recognizing that when slaves were free, that wasn't enough. And so they were like, okay, this amount of acreage and mules. So they could like help facilitate some form of like support, because there was some recognition that wrong had been done. And then I think it says a lot that they fell short on that, which really speaks to how the American dream is like, well, how America has fallen short of the dream for most of the population. And then the fact that it's still a conversation, and people, I don't even know if people know that reparations was originally the intent of it. They really understood that it's just not enough to free people. You need to have some support to help people reintegrate, because I mean, at that point, people were intentionally held back.
mm-hmm. And it's just, it's, in the end of it, it's white supremacy. It is white supremacy that is the issue here, because like, you can't claim that there's complete racial equality when obviously crap like this is crap like gerrymandering, redistricting, suppressing voters of color. Heck, did you see what Mitch McConnell said? Should I even mention it?
I wanna talk so much junk about him, but we have Lindsey Graham in office, so I really can't. What did he say?
It was someone had asked him, what would you say to voters of color? And he said something along the lines, I didn't watch the clip, I read about the clip because I knew that I would throw my phone through a window if I watched the whole thing.
You got to protect your energy.
He said something along the lines differentiating African American voters from actual Americans.
Wow.
Like,
that's a representative.
So Mitch Please was trending on Twitter for a bit, but that is someone that said something last week.
Yeah, that's
an elected official.
Yeah, and again, like a very blatant racist who is in office representing a state.
And like people saying that, like, I thought these racist issues were handled. No, we are still uncovering scandals of politicians donning blackface. We are still uncovering like the fact that there's still chapters of the KKK that are active out there. Like, come on, people.
Yeah, I think he mentions how Mississippi, was it 2018?
2020. No, it was 2020.
Removed the Confederate flag from their state flag. And I just had to think, and again, I can't really talk that much junk because it took, 2015, South Carolina removed it from our state house. And now there's a day, I think it's like the Confederacy Day, where every year they like raise the Confederate flag on the state house to remember the good old days. So to use that argument that racism is not still present in our society is literally to live under a rock. It is literally everywhere.
That is willful ignorance at that point.
Yeah.
Like, if someone is recognizing, okay, I see how like all those what's its faces, those housing loans that really helped jumpstart the American dream in the 50s, helped white people, but it didn't help people of color. And I see how like school districts are like drawn and how like gerrymandering is a thing. But I also think that those are just economic issues. That is blatant, just sticking your head in the sand.
Yeah. Because I mean, it is racist. And I think one of the problems is like the way that like American pull yourself up by your boots, like you work hard, you can achieve anything. And if people really buy into that, then they think, oh, okay, sure, like there's a lot of impoverished people, but that's their fault. And so it's like covering up the underlying, no, there are systematic reasons why. And I mean, I think if you really look at it, why are all of these people in this specific group impoverished? There's no way it's every single one of their faults that's the case. At some point, you do have to recognize some form of systematic inequality, because it's the only logical choice. If you choose to believe every single person is impoverished or whatever the situation is by their own doing, then that's a lot of ignorance.
Like, I can't help but think also about the criminal injustice system,
Yeah.
about the ratio of brown and black people who are incarcerated
Mm-hmm.
versus white people who are incarcerated, the sentencing, the whole system.
Yeah.
And you think about it and you're just like, okay, like there is no way that two people who had the exact like same class of crime, one got X amount of years,
Mm-hmm.
way more than their white counterpart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that totally happens. It happens in the prison system. It happens in the school system. The amount of times that young children of color are profiled and are sent to the principal's office, like I think it's like 10 times more than a white student.
Mm.
It starts whenever like it starts so young.
Mm-hmm.
Like this isn't it's not systemic, but like for me, I noticed the first time I got called a derogatory term for I think I was in 3rd grade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very young. And that's learned. That's not, you're not born racist. You're not born saying racial slurs. You learn that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not over, people. Sorry, Brienne. It's not over.
Not over. Not even close.
Nope. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Whenever Acho just mentions, yeah, America has a black president. How can that be how can we be racist? And I was like, you know how many threats Obama got?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Still gets to this day.
It's kind of, it's hopeful that if you have a black president, then that means everything's fantastic. But unfortunately, that's nowhere near the truth. Thinking about like all that Obama had to go through. I mean, even thinking about all that he had to go through when running as president, like sitting president, how he was disrespected because he's a black man.
They
Come
straight
on.
up questioned his birth.
Yeah.
Come on, people.
Yeah. The president after him led the charge to see his birth certificate, to question his citizenship. That's racism.
That's also a racist policy that first of all, that's also a racist policy that a foreign-born American cannot be president. Vote for me in 20 whatever, y'all. I'm gonna run for something. Maybe 30 something.
But just the important thing is that you were voted for.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Let's see if I like piss too many people off. Oh my goodness. So yeah, I love how Acho finishes this chapter by saying, as always, a good place to start is learning more. So it's good that we're still asking these questions, as tiring as it may be to just sit there and go, oh, you're so close. But they're asking questions.
Yeah, I think education is key, and just keep continuing. I agree with him. Keep continuing to educate yourself, and it's cool that he's writing a book and he's still saying this, because I think you would look at someone who's writing a book as an expert and he's like, oh no, here are sources where I used to learn all of this information. It sets a really good precedent for always continuing to learn.
Yep. And yet we still have states trying to ban critical race theory.
But we had a Black president. We're in a post-racial society.
Most people don't even know the definition of critical race theory who are actively voting against it. So I will leave that chapter with my phone through the window.
Not post-racial society. It's still everywhere. We still need to do a ton of work.
Oh,
in conclusion.
In conclusion, y'all, we got a lot to cover. You ready for question number 2?
Yes, go for it.
All righty. So my question is about the term reverse racism. It seems to me that it's an oxymoron. Isn't racism just racism? Whether it's white people hating black people hating Latinos, Latinos hating Asians, Asians hating white people, etc. Hate based on skin color / nationality is just hate, and that's racism. Isn't the reverse of racism love? Thanks, Tracy.
I will say, to prepare for this one, I read the number 6, the one about the N-word. I read the one that like we just talked about, and then the N-word. I didn't read about the reverse racism yet.
Oh, my bad. Oops. So you were probably guessing, oh, why'd we skip that? My bad.
I was like, oh, she's gone to the second.
Okay, so scratch all of that. We don't edit these too closely, so whoever's listening, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. Why do I have to bleep myself when I'm singing in the car?
This is great.
Why do I have to bleep myself when I'm singing in the car to a Black authored song? Why can't I just quote the lyrics, or even sing the music that Black artists themselves sell in a public domain? Chris, I'll let you take that one since I read the completely wrong chapter for this week.
So, Chris, I will just start this by saying, I think Emmanuel Acho does a really good job, like, within the Black community, we can decide if we want to say the word or we don't want to say the word. Like that's up to us. And we have the green light either way. Anyone who is not Black cannot say the N-word, like point blank period, whether they're talking with their friends, whether they're repeating song lyrics, it's a no. It's just a no. I don't like, no. Even if like, because I've heard it where it's like, oh yeah, one of my friends said I could say it. That's not true. Your friend lied. You can't say it if you're not Black. And I will answer this direct question by saying, if I, a Black person, who we all agree can say the word if I want to, if I hear a rap song or any song, it's not fair to just put that on rap, but if I hear a song and it has the N-word in it, I just leave it blank. I don't say the word. I say every single lyric, blank, every single lyric. So if I can do that, anyone can do that. There are no excuses.
Just the sheer amount of entitlement that comes along with with the people that are usually the ones that want to say the N-word astounds me. Just the entitlement.
And it's like, but like with a word that ugly, with a word with that such weighted dark history, why would you want to say it? Even if it is a song lyric, why would you not look at that word and be like, oof, I can say every word, but I don't want to say that one.
I was having a conversation with a friend who does not live in this country but is Black, and said, yeah, we had some exchange students over here and they were saying the word. And I was just like, yikes.
Wow.
And I was like, what year was this? And they were like, oh, last year. And I was like, ooh.
Exchange white students?
Yeah.
Wow. It's ultimately disrespectful, I think. I mean, I don't just think that. I think the general consensus is that it's very racist and very disrespectful. And I think the emphasis, and Emmanuel Acho talks about this, he's like, the question isn't like, should I say it? Shouldn't I say it? The question is, why do you want to say it? You need to like really dive into that, because I think if you really understand the impact of that word, the history that follows that word, and if you like care at all and have like any respect at all, then you wouldn't want to use it. Like, it wouldn't even be a discussion.
Like, I think it also just goes to show the instance that I had with my friend. They were explaining that to me, that it's a global thing.
Yeah.
It's not just an American thing. Like, people don't say it. Just don't go there.
Yeah, it's a very simple no.
End of podcast. There we go.
I do think there is a conversation. The point is, the word is no. Like, you can't say the word if you're not Black. I do think, like, in a separate note, there are artists who are taking that into consideration, that their audience is wider than Black people, you know, and people follow, they don't necessarily, because right now it's on like a honor system where if you care, if you like don't want to seem racist, then you don't say the word. But if you don't care, you don't really like think that deeply into it, you will say the word. So they're thinking about that when they're writing the lyrics to their songs.
It's just like you said, like, it's the entitlement behind it. It's the why do you want to say that word? Like, why are you so almost desperate to say that word? At what point does this word have the kind of meaning to you, in the context that if you are not Black, what entitlement do you have to that word? If you think that you have entitlement to that word, think of the history of that entitlement, and then like just look at yourself and just be like, what on earth is wrong with me? I don't know how else to put it.
It seems so straightforward, but here we are. Like, I'm sure this question comes up all the time. I remember with The View, The Talk, what are the daytime television shows where it's like a panel of women and they talk? Adrienne Bailon, she was saying, like, at the end of the day, if that word is so heavily drenched with racism, and you know, if like there's a question of like, should I say it, should I not say it, she was like, if it's so attached to racism, I don't want anyone even thinking that I'm racist, so I'm just going to stay clear of it. And I think that is beautiful.
Exactly. I'm just kind of like, just no, stay away from it. Unless you don't care that someone thinks that you're racist, which we have a whole nother issue there.
Because you should definitely care.
Should definitely care. Come on, people.
I wonder if it's like attached to the same mentality of like, the other question, well, not the other question, but I think last week when we were talking about how people like are still, how Black people are still upset, and people like have that entitled feeling of like, yeah, but it was so long ago. I wonder if this is like a same kind of mindset. It kind of feels similar where, because if you think it was so long ago and you think people should be over it, then I could see you trying to rationalize using such a awful word.
I 100% agree with that. Because, like, I think the thing is that people don't want to look bad and people don't want to feel like they're the bad guys. It's like this, it's like the whole, like, we don't want to feel like we are the villains. No one wants to be the bad guy.
No one wants to be the bad guy. I think that's a good point. No one wants to be the villain.
But like, I think that's a huge driving factor behind like why white people are like, no, but I'm a good white person. Says it later in the book, also in the chapter that I read instead of reading this chapter. Oops. My bad. But Acho meant, I can't remember if it was, oh my goodness, I'm getting so mixed up now. But at some point, Acho says, I was having a conversation with a white woman that said, oh, my ancestors didn't own slaves, so I wasn't a part of that. And I'm just like, yeah, no.
I think that was in the one we read, because I think I read it too, and he was just saying, okay, like, so you can trace your genealogy and say that no one owned slaves, but was everyone an abolitionist?
Yeah, no. Look, even Lincoln wasn't a perfect abolitionist. He was racist as crap.
He was very racist. Not fun fact, interesting fact. He did not free slaves because he thought it was the right thing to do. He did it because he thought that was the only way to save the Union.
Yep.
But did we learn that from Kendi?
I think we did.
Okay. I feel like I remember talking to you about this very subject.
But another thing that I did learn, who was an abolitionist this week, was the founder of Red Lobster.
What?
The founder of Red Lobster was an abolitionist.
That is crazy. And the first thing that popped into my mind is, of course, that's why Beyonce uses it in her song.
I was like, yes, I love Red Lobster.
Wow, that's so interesting. Where did you see that?
It was on TikTok.
Okay, we should talk about how TikTok is really educating people.
Shows you how to dance, and it shows you Black history. It's so good.
That is so interesting. I'm gonna have to look into that now.
I'm looking it up right now, actually.
And I will link the TikTok in the description because we should all know this valuable information.
Talk Red Lobster abolition. Tion? Or is it SION? I graduated, people, I promise. Okay. Red Lobster. I literally saw it. I saw it was on I saw that it was on Instagram, but it was reposted from a TikTok. I will find it and I will send it to you.
Yes, thank you.
It's good stuff. Everyone this week, go eat at Red Lobster.
If you take anything away from this, that is what it should be.
Eat at Red Lobster. Those Cheddar Bay biscuits are to die for.
We've talked a lot.
Yeah, we did.
What are you thinking? What are you feeling?
I am feeling a little scattered right now. Still definitely coffee hyped. Definitely excited for next week since I already read half of it. But I'm definitely looking forward to continuing like this talk and talking about and just talking more about, you know, how we live in a racist society and how everything's going fine.
I think us saying it's fine, we're fine, it's got to be just continual throughout the year now.
Yep. We're going to make t-shirts eventually. Mm-hmm. We're going to do it.
Because it's fine.
We're fine. Alrighty. You ready for next week's questions?
Yes. The first question is very intriguing also.
Yeah.
I don't know what the second one is.
About reverse racism.
Mm-hmm.
And then, what's the best way to make the most impactful contributions to dismantling the institutions and policies meant to keep POC at a disadvantage?
Whoa.
Ooh, way to go, Mike.
Yeah.
It's the best way to do it. Huh. A lot to think about, because my first initial thought is burn the soul to a crisp. But then I don't want to get arrested.
I look forward to seeing what Emmanuel Acho says. He's very positive, which I think we need.
Thanks, Emmanuel. This is great. Well, I will see you next week, and I will read the right chapters this time.
We got this.
Good stuff. All right, bye.